Hey, what's good, self-direct investors? I hope you're all doing great, and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Jordan. I'm the mind behind Make More Capital, and today we're coming at you with a midweek update in the world of cannabis. Now, before we jump in, if you enjoy this video or you learn something, please just leave a like on it as it really helps out my channel. And then, of course, if you want to learn how to take advantage of this generational investment opportunity, subscribe below so that you don't miss any future videos, and then there's plenty of content for you to go back, rewatch, and educate yourself with. I've tried to put all the news and facts in one place so that you can watch episodes over time to learn about the evolution of the industry, identify top players that you keep seeing pop up, and take advantage whenever you feel ready if you choose to do so. But firstly, I want to wish you all a very happy 420, so hopefully you get some downtime to relax and enjoy that. Well, just a reminder from Weed Street 420 that the East Coast wave kicks off tomorrow, as these are the dispensaries opening on April 21st in New Jersey. And so when we look at New Jersey, we got to remember that this state has a population of 8 million people. So 8 million more Americans will get access to legal cannabis than they did before, helping organically expand the total addressable market in the US. But let's not forget that the East Coast wave includes New Jersey, plus Connecticut and New York. And while Connecticut has a population of 3 million people and New York has a population of 20 million, that means in the next 12 months, we're expecting the total addressable market to expand by 30 million, as 30 million more Americans on the East Coast, being in New Jersey, then Connecticut and New York, will have access to legal cannabis that didn't before. And that is exactly why I keep referring to this as a generational investment opportunity if you have the patience to wait, because despite the fact that the MSO valuations have only fallen in the last 12 months, the reality is their fundamentals have only gotten stronger. They've expanded and opened more retail locations, and many of the tier 1 MSOs have only gotten larger through mergers and acquisitions. And so when new states like this unlock, and many of the MSOs are in these states, it costs nothing extra to these MSOs, and ultimately it just adds to their revenue, which makes their fundamentals even stronger. And so on to this one. This was a big one from thehill.com, as legalizing cannabis lowers demand for prescription drugs study finds, highlighting Big Pharma's biggest nightmare, the truth of the cannabis plant actually getting out there. As Cornell University researchers analyzed data from the Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services in all 50 states from 2011 to 2019, and they found a decline in the volume of prescriptions targeting pain, depression, anxiety, sleep, psychosis, and seizures in states that have legalized recreational use, all symptoms that cannabis can likely treat better than addictive opioids. And 37 states and the District of Columbia currently permit the use of medical cannabis with a prescription. So these results have important implications. Shyam Rahman, a doctoral student in the Cornell Jeb E. Brooks School of Public Policy, said in a news release, "Yeah, so let's deschedule the plant already. It's the reduction in drug utilization that we find could lead to a significant cost savings for state Medicaid programs. Yeah, and saving lives as opposed to allowing the opioid epidemic to continue. The results also indicate an opportunity to reduce the harm that can come with the dangerous side effects associated with some prescription drugs," Rahman added. Glad that we're on the same page. Hopefully we see something done about this sooner than later. On to some state news. We got this one from Arizona, as medical cannabis sales continue to decline while recreational sales bounce back. So overall sales for both programs totaled $121.2 million for the month of February. While medical cannabis continues its multi-month decline since last October, recreational sales continue to hover just shy of the record $70 million attained in December 2021. So for the breakdown of the sales, you can pause to read this snippet right here, but just to break down some of the taxes, as cannabis sales translated to $21.5 million in February taxes, with a little more than $11 million credited to the 16% excise tax on recreational cannabis. While medicinal cannabis patients pay just the sales tax, local jurisdictions charge an additional 2% or so for all recreational sales. But with that, sales taxes on all cannabis sales in the state totaled $10.3 million in February alone, with $4.6 million coming from medical and $5.6 million from recreational. With about $4.5 million of those taxes went into the state's general fund, 737 of them from that month alone went to public schools. And so there's more info on the tax breakdown, but nonetheless just highlighting the benefits in Arizona for ending cannabis prohibition. Well, we move on to this one out of Montana, as recreational cannabis sales off to a booming start. And while I've highlighted this in past week's videos, just again, good to highlight the positives of this, as providers in the Treasure State have sold about $44 million in recreational cannabis products since the beginning of the year when sales first became legal. Add in medical cannabis, and that total soars to $73 million year to date, according to Montana Department of Revenue data from early April. And while this might not seem like a lot, it's worth remembering that Montana has a very small population of just 1 million people. And so with that, if the current trajectory continues, the state will hit $174 million in recreational cannabis sales by the end of the year, and the state budget office initially projected just $130 million in 2022. So if that's going to be roughly $50 million more, just goes to show of how off their projections were and what happens when you legally supply that demand. Well, we've got this one out of Maryland, as apparently Maryland's medical cannabis industry is expected to hit $600 million in total revenue. And as legalization looms, how much bigger will it get? It's a great question. We won't know until legalization happens, but the good news is is that Maryland is putting the question on the 2022 ballot for voters, and likely they will vote an overwhelming yes, and it just depends how quickly Maryland will be able to launch that adult use program. So thank you, Puff Daddy, for sharing this one. And for more information, you can grab the article below if you wish. Well, at the same time, just wanted to share, here's how Ann Arbor plans to spend their $365,000 in new cannabis tax revenue simply because they ended cannabis prohibition and now they're seeing the benefits. So just wanted to add, City Administrator Milton Mahoney laid out his recommendations during a budget presentation to City Council Monday night, April 18th, proposing putting it to 4 areas. So just an example, $700,000 for a special grant fund to help low-income residents pay for improvements to their homes to make them safer, healthier, more comfortable, and more sustainable. $100,000 to help residents in need pay utility bills through the Barrier Busters program. $100,000 of an apprenticeship program creating entry-level public work positions at the city, and $35,366 for backpacks and school supplies for families in need through a nonprofit. Try to tell me that ending cannabis prohibition isn't good for the state and those that live in it. Well, on to this one from MJ Biz Daily, is recreational cannabis consumption lounge opens in New Mexico. So we've got another state setting a precedent while we've got bars for consuming alcohol. It's wise and worth noting that there's no reason why we shouldn't have bars where you can consume cannabis, as New Mexico's first recreational cannabis consumption lounge opened in Las Cruces near the border with El Paso, Texas, according to media reports. This is really groundbreaking, not only for us, but for the state of New Mexico. We're putting cannabis on the map, Soul Cannabis co-founder Kwame Panchak told El Paso TV station KFOX. And so while we've heard of this out of California and Nevada, we've got another state that recently legalized, which is New Mexico, wasting no time before allowing the opening of recreational consumption lounges. And so just happy to share that as more states allow this, where cannabis is legal, we're likely going to see it happen in other places where it's legal as well. I wanted to share this one from GTI. This is something we likely would not have expected, as U.S. agrees to return $1.1 million to company busted for hauling legal cannabis money, which is mind-blowing because when has the U.S. government actually said, okay, no, you're right, we're going to give back, and we might have been wrong in what we did. So thank you, Green Thumb Industries, for sharing this, as this news highlights the need for the passage of the Safe Banking Act, which is a fact because none of these companies could be targeted by the feds if cannabis were allowed to bank like any other industry. So cannabis businesses can have the same rights as all other businesses, like bank accounts, so they do not have to transport cash and be subject to these unjustified asset seizures. But again, the first time we've ever seen the feds give money back, so hopefully this means we're at that tipping point or slowly passing through it, but nonetheless, more reason as to why we need to pass SAFE, because it's good policy and there's more pressure than ever before. And so the good news is that the Safe Banking Act is still in the final House version of the America Competes Act as it heads into the conference process. So big shout out to MSO Elevator for sharing this, as JD Super says they hope to pass America Competes Act by the end of spring, which would mean within 10 weeks. And so this gives us the potential timeline to plan around, as dates this could pass are April 25th to the 29th, weekdays in May, and then lastly, the worst case scenario, June 6th to the 17th, and the 21st to the 24th. But keep in mind, this is a very important bill for Congress to pass, so it does have to get passed. The issue mainly is, will it get passed with the Safe Banking Act in it, or will the Safe Banking Act be taken out again by Schumer, which will simply just prove that he's working for big pharmaceutical companies and not for the American people. And so on to some snippets from investment firms. So I want to thank Todd Harrison for sharing this one, but before we go in, just keep in mind that this is speculation. Don't take it as truth, but just take it as more information that you can take in and compare with what you already know, and then use that to juggle what you think could happen, and then make any sort of investment decisions based on it. But this comes from Camilo at BTIG on U.S. Cannabis. More pieces moving around the chessboard for SAFE to pass in the coming months, and we believe the probability of SAFE passing through the America Competes Act has increased markedly. And so more pieces moving around just highlights what Todd said, but mainly if you wanted to read what you should know in the first and second snippet, you can pause to read here, and then if you want to get third, fourth, and fifth, you can pause to read as well. And so this comes from BTIG, while this one is from AGP on U.S. Cannabis, so you can pause to read, as they highlight 420 week comes with answers on New Jersey Start and continued questions on federal reform. So you can pause to read there to get what AGP views on the outlook going forward. While this one from thank you Todd Harrison for sharing, but this one comes from Cowen, I believe, another recent U.S. cannabis policy hawk, has picked up on the pivot to safe banking. As assessing the impact of Schumer delaying his legalization bill, this comes from Cowen. So pause to read. Otherwise, if you can't read the whole thing, you can grab the link below. But just more information to weigh in what you already know and to help you plan accordingly for your own situation. So I wanted to share a few other snippets from High Times, as again, more pressure is building to get SAFE passed as state treasurers ramp up push for Safe Banking Act. As we see, the latest round of lobbying came last week from a pair of state treasurers, Colorado's Dave Young and Washington's Mike Peliciotti. The two Democratic officials took to Twitter on Friday. Be great if you would take to mainstream media outlets as well, but they probably won't let you send this message, sadly, to sound the alarm on the dangers posed to cannabis dispensaries in the absence of reform. Because, yeah, sadly, when the Democrats say that they care about human lives, but they don't do anything about Safe Banking Act, it contradicts what they claim to stand for. Well, I found this random one from investmentnews.com titled Cannabis Investments Mellow as Congress Tarries on Decriminalization. And so while the first bit of this article mainly highlights the lackluster performance from cannabis ETFs over the last 12 months because the Dems did not keep any of their promises, which they simply could have, helping give them some easy wins and keep some popularity points up until this point, which they've completely lost, here's what some fund managers have to say. While it might be easy to write the category off as a far-fetched effort supported by people who aren't spending their money on ETFs, those closest to the industry insist investors are missing the market. As fundamentals at the micro level have been strong and companies are becoming cash flow positive, and even at the macro level, the news is good because the market continues to get bigger, said Jason Wilson, cannabis banking and research expert at ETF Managers Group. Now, he doesn't necessarily specify between MSOs or Canadian LPs, but clearly he's talking about US MSOs here. As the disconnect, Wilson said, is that the funds offering exposure to the cannabis market are trading on the political news. While the total addressable market for cannabis is increasing as new states come online, which we saw in the last 12 months, Arizona and New Mexico, and in the next 12 months, we'll see New Jersey, Connecticut, and New York. But all the valuations are attached to one data point, the expectation of federal reform, he said. And so the growth and progress in decriminalization at the state level have been completely discounted by investors. And this is why I recommend focusing on the great American state-led growth story as opposed to what can happen at the federal level. Because while we all want federal decriminalization and descheduling of the cannabis plant, that's just not how US politics works, and we're likely not going to get that anytime soon. But as a compromise, because $25 billion in cash is just not safe, we will get safe plus a few other things that will hopefully help right some wrongs from the past war on drugs. And when we get that, there will be a massive re-rating, and anyone who could invest at this point in time and wait until that happens will be rewarded. And that is why I have put my money where my mouth is and will be invested and believe that this is a good spot for you as well. But again, this is not advice. Only invest if you believe that this is going to happen as well and you believe the state-led growth story is foreshadowing of what is to come. But onto this one from MJ Stock Trader. Wanted to share this as 2023 will be the first year all Tier 1 MSOs have a positive price-to-earnings ratio. And here are the price-to-earnings estimates based on cash flow freeze earnings per share based on 2023 revenue figures. And so Curaleaf looking at 166, Green Thumb Industries 28, Trulieve 21, Cresco Labs 21, and Verano 9. And while I'm not formally trained in finance and I like to learn as I go, I do know that a positive earnings per share means that the company is profitable. And if we look towards 2023, I don't think you'll find any companies out there that are this profitable with this much growth potential that are trading at such low valuations right now as the US MSOs. And so that is why this opportunity will not last forever. Well, on to some MSO news, as Curaleaf releases their inaugural Rooted in Good Social Impact Report. And as certain lawmakers in certain states want to try and force MSOs to give back even more, as opposed to forcing the government to give back in some sort of way when they've caused all of the problems of the war on drugs over this last 50 years, here's an example of what Curaleaf is already doing to give back. As outlined in the report, Curaleaf has made the following progress against these key goals. As part of its 420x25 supplier diversity commitment, Curaleaf is doing business with 420 new cannabis brands, ancillary suppliers, and advocacy organizations from underrepresented communities by 2025. The company is now working with more than 100 new and diverse partners and suppliers after 1 year of this program. While Curaleaf is actively working towards its goal for 10% of its team members to come from populations touched by low-level cannabis-related offenses. In 2021, 3.5% of new hires met this criteria, and the company is taking steps to increase that number in 2022. While the company set a goal to contribute at least $1 million in community investments to programs that address collateral consequences associated with cannabis-related offenses. In total, Curaleaf and select brands contributed over $2.4 million to partner organizations across the country in 2021. So good job, Curaleaf, and I highlight that this is exactly why you can feel good about investing in US MSOs, because these companies are actually changing the status quo for the better. On to this news from Trulieve as they celebrate 420 for all with this campaign through April, as the campaign has partnered with brands, organizations, and events to enact changes in cannabis legislation and continue the company's commitment to social equity and inclusion. As each state where Trulieve operates will be activating at the local level, ranging from brand giveaways to food trucks and DJs, while Trulieve will also offer product launches and regional activations across the country. So for more information on the brand launches, you can pause to read, or the activations across the country, which seem like events that they're holding in Orlando, Arizona, Canna, and Massachusetts. Well, on to this one from Tom Engel. So thanks, Tom, for sharing. As Leafly's CEO will ring the NASDAQ opening bell on 420 because why not? And so as Leafly is a publication about cannabis, hopefully this will help spread more awareness. But since they don't touch the plant, actually, they can uplist onto major U.S. exchanges. And so while the U.S. MSOs still touch the plant and cannot uplist, let's not forget that they are the ones supplying Americans with the best non-addictive alternative to the opioid epidemic. And so hopefully they will get that right soon. But once these MSOs can uplist, which is a matter of when, not if, those who have the patience and have invested now will be rewarded. And so on to this one from Forbes. A decade into legal cannabis, Americans see legalization as a net positive for economy and society. Here's a better title. Decade into legal cannabis, legalization is a net positive for economy and society. That would be a better way to write it. But just to add, supporting economic growth, to conduct the poll, 1,100 Americans aged 21 and older were questioned about their thoughts on cannabis consumption habits and legalization. Nearly 2/3 of respondents stated that they believe cannabis has an overall positive impact on society, while 61.5% felt cannabis plays an important role in supporting U.S. economic growth, while 62.6% also said the cannabis industry is important for the local economy. And so that's all I'm going to grab out of this. You can read more information if you'd like, but this basically comes from a poll conducted by Jushi, and so most of what the poll features is listed in this article. So just wanted to jump to this one as new poll reveals Americans' views on cannabis. And while polls are good, at the same time, we want to also be informing Americans about the actual data, because while it's good that they feel this way, if they saw the data and saw that it was true, that, oh, legalization actually has a lot of net positive benefits, then they'd just be, more willing to say that this is a fact as opposed to what they feel. But mainly just to highlight down here, vast majority supports equal access to banking. Boom. When asked, how much do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Federal banking restrictions should be lifted so that American cannabis companies can have equal access to banking services. 67.6% agreed. Another way of saying this, how much do you agree with the following statement? Federal banking restrictions should be lifted so that Americans can stop dying from targeted robberies because they're forced to deal in cash. I imagine more than 67.6% would even agree to that one. But so you can grab the link below if you wanted to read more, as there's a lot of info in here. So awesome on Jushi for conducting this poll and getting some more data from Americans. While onto this one from Tom Engel, wanted to share, as some more shenanigans do continue, apparently a new federal lawsuit brought by a group called True Social Equity in Cannabis claims that Canna, Green Thumb, Verano, and Certera collude to keep cannabis prices high as a part of a Chicago cartel involving the Pritzker and Wrigley families. And while I don't think this holds much weight or could actually win at the federal level, I did want to share it as Tom Engel shared this as of 9 a.m. yesterday, so it is new. But keep in mind, or at least from my view, I just see this as more of the sort of shenanigans that we've seen in Georgia, whereas if an applicant doesn't win a license and others do, as opposed to improving how they apply for the second round that will eventually come out and allowing those that did win to start properly supplying the demand, we see an organization step in and sue the whole progress to a stalemate. And so while this is very frustrating, and again, I don't know a whole lot about this, I'm just speculating based on what I've seen, and now we're seeing more of this. Do let me know in the comments if you know more. And so just as an example, a group called True Social Equity. Interesting. So this is likely a group. They likely want more social equity, but they're probably also not harmed by the war on drugs if they have the funds to file a federal lawsuit as well and drag out this process and make these outrageous claims that Canna, Green Thumb, Verano, and Certera collude to keep cannabis prices high as part of a Chicago cartel. Seems a bit outrageous, but nonetheless, just thinking out loud here. So let me know in the comments if you do know more, but I wouldn't be surprised if some of these targeted lawsuits are coming from individuals that want to continue shorting U.S. MSOs for a little while longer, or individuals that have a stake in delaying the great American state-led growth story a little while longer while they can until the flood breaks. And so lastly, just wanted to share this one that I found on Reddit, as apparently Vanguard joins Bank of America and Wells Fargo as custodians that will no longer accept purchases and transfers in of most over-the-counter securities. And so you can pause to read the whole email here. However, just to scroll down, whether this is a concerted effort to not allow American investors access to the great American state-led growth story, which are the U.S. MSOs, that's speculation. I can't make that claim. However, if you are an American investor and you want to find a broker that will give you access to over-the-counter stocks so that you can invest in U.S. MSOs, which happen to be some companies in the fastest growing emerging market in the U.S. that happen to be severely undervalued, mostly because they trade on the over-the-counter and can't uplist on major U.S. exchanges. I just want you to know that Fidelity is where you want to go if you're an American investor and if you want access to these, very undervalued U.S. companies. And so lastly, just wanted to share this one from swissinfo.ch as health officials approve the first Swiss project to sell cannabis for recreational use. So while I shared their intention to announce this pilot project in the past, I'm very happy to relay that the Federal Office of Public Health said it had approved a request for a pilot on the regulated sale of cannabis through local pharmacies. It will be restricted to just under 400 participants over the age of 18 as part of a joint project by the University of Basel, its psychiatric clinics, and its cantonal health department. And the trial, due to begin in September, is intended to help evaluate the effects of new regulations on the recreational use of cannabis and ultimately combat black market distribution, the office said on Tuesday. So good job, Switzerland. I'm glad that you will be launching this in September, and if you're looking for any data, you can always check Canada, Colorado, Washington, or all the states that did it before you. But that is it for today's episode, folks. I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I really hope you got some value out of it. What did you think of the stories mentioned? Let me know in the comments if you have any questions or suggestions, and I'd be happy to address them. But besides that, if you enjoyed this video and you learned something, please just leave a like on it. Subscribe below if you don't want to miss any future videos, and I will catch you on Sunday for This Week in Cannabis News. Happy 420, everybody. Have a great week.